And these pictures that we're showing our viewers on screen come from the 8th arrondissement around the Champs-Élysées, the Arc de Triomphe. We are, of course, expecting a second rally to take place much further east in the Place de la Bastille a little later. And as I was saying earlier, we have pictures coming into us from Marseille and a string of other cities across the country. 31,000, as I was saying, taking part so far. If those numbers aren't boosted and we don't see a greater turnout, can Macron at the end of the day say, I've been victorious?
I think it's a bit early to blow a whistle on this and say, yes, I've won. I think Macron is... at this very moment, I know that Emmanuel Macron is sitting in the Élysée Palace watching probably the same images that we are showing on France 24, thinking, OK, am I gaining ground in this? Am I actually winning a bit more, not support, but I'm winning more ground on my side, and this is going to boost me and make maybe life a little bit easier. But the culminating fact is we still don't know. The question is, what is he going to say on Monday? And he's going to speak on Monday to announce probably some measures. We've already had a few. We've had the most important measure, which was the suppression of this increase in petrol prices and diesel fuel, which is due to come in on the 1st of January next year. 6% for diesel, 3% for petrol. That has now been abolished. They've also announced a freeze on gas and electricity prices next year. So those are two very important measures which the protesters were asking for. The government obviously has something else up its sleeve, which it's ready to pull out, like a rabbit out of a hat, if you like, to try to pacify these protesters. And that's probably what Emmanuel Macron is deciding he's going to announce on Monday. We don't know what that is yet. We don't really have an idea. Probably maybe a boost to the minimum wage, but that's going to be complicated for him. And also maybe a bonus for those on low pay as well. That's more likely. But I think after today's protests, if it's not as large as it was last weekend, which certainly seems to be the case, it appears that it's losing steam, and that can only play into the hands of the government and also maybe reduce national support for this movement, which has been up to 80%, which is also known to be falling.
For those of you just tuning in to us here on France 24 this Saturday, these are the pictures coming into us here at the current time. Apart from this gentleman who seems to want to break that traffic light, it seems to be a much calmer situation on the streets of Paris at the current time compared to the pictures that we were seeing, of course, those famous pictures now of that those mass riots, that huge amount of unrest that took place last Saturday. Philippe Turle, in terms of the rest of France and French public opinion, is the Yellow Vest movement losing support in any way?
It's difficult to pinpoint exactly what is going to happen, Thomas, because the demands rest the same, are basically the same. That is, what is the reason for this movement? The reason is it's not just since Emmanuel Macron. This is something that's been brewing for decades, and it is the fact that there is a difference in France between those who live in citizen towns who earn decent salaries, have a comfortable lifestyle, have money to spend on vacation, on buying a car and all those sort of things. And then the rest of France who live in maybe rural areas, who earn less money, who are on the minimum wage, who feel that they are penalised because they're constantly paying the same VAT, they're paying the same petrol prices with the same tax, 60% tax on it, as everybody else, and they can't make ends meet. They can't afford to go on holiday. They can't afford to buy a new car. And this is boiled over due to the fact that the government has now decided to move ecologically forward by increasing taxes on fuel and saying you're going to have to pay these increased taxes. And people say, well, look, hold on a minute. We can't afford to buy a new car. It's going to make our life even more difficult. We need a car because there's no public transport. There's no doctor where we live. The school is a long way away. My wife needs a car. I need a car. And we need to pay petrol. We can't afford to do that. And it's making our lives very difficult. We want the government to make an effort to make our lives better. Government says, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep these taxes up. So that's what's led to this, the starting of this movement last month. But it's something that's been growing for a very long time. And it's grown so much that now all sorts of demands have been thrown in there as well. Even one, for example, to create a People's Assembly in France where a group of citizens can act as a counterpower to the National Assembly. Of course, that's never going to happen. Some saying that Emmanuel Macron should be removed from the Élysée Palace and someone else should take over. That's not going to happen either. So unless you can push all these demands into one central command, then it's going to be very difficult to know how this yellow vest movement is going to continue afterwards, and in what form, which is one of the problems that the government has got to face.
Philip Turlott, International Affairs commentator, thank you very much. For those of you just joining us